They poisoned him and called it care, told everyone I was paranoid, but I found the hidden money moving through shell accounts inside the family company, and that is when the revenge started, because at 6:14 a.m., federal agents showed up with a warrant and took her out in cuffs while the rest of them stood there pretending nothing was happening. And by the end of the week, one lost his license, one lost everything, and one was looking at prison, and my name is Lyra Hayes. I was the one they tried to silence and the one who took them all down. Chapter 1. The Pill That Didn't Belong. I knew something was wrong the second the pill touched my palm. I did not stare at it. I did not need to. The color was just a little off, a shade warmer than it should have been. Most people would never notice. I had spent too many years around medication carts not to. Ethan lay behind me, propped up against the headboard, his breathing slow and uneven. A man who used to run entire companies before lunch now needed a minute just to catch his breath. "Is it time?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, still facing the window. I rolled the pill once between my fingers. Same size, same shape, same label on the bottle, different batch number. Not a mistake. I felt it settle in my chest, not panic, something colder. Someone had switched this on purpose. Slow damage, quiet damage, the kind you could deny until it was too late. I switched the pill in my hand. It was quick, automatic, no sound, no hesitation. For a second, I wondered if someone expected me to notice, if this was already part of something bigger than I could see. I turned and handed Ethan the correct one. He took it without looking, swallowed, then leaned back like even that small effort cost him. His hand trembled when he reached for the glass. Just a slight shake, easy to miss if you were not paying attention. I was. He used to decide the fate of entire companies with a single call. Now he had to steady his hand to drink water. I watched him longer than I should have. What am I doing? I thought. Saving him or stepping into something I cannot walk away from? 6 weeks ago, I was standing in a hospital hallway that smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, staring through glass at my younger sister. Emma was 27, wires everywhere, machines keeping track of things her body could not manage anymore. Late-stage kidney failure. That was the phrase the doctor used. Flat. Practiced. Without a transplant and recovery care, she has a few months. Not years. Months. The number on the paper felt heavier than anything else. $400,000. Maybe more. I did not have that kind of time or that kind of money. That was when I met Daniel Reeves. He did not try to soften anything. I respected that. "This is a contract marriage," he said across a quiet office in Midtown. "You get access to funds, medical coverage, immediate support. And in return?" I asked. "You marry my client. You stay for 6 months. If he dies within that time, you leave with nothing." Nothing. I looked at the date. February 2025. 6 months. Emma had maybe 3. I signed. The first place I saw was the penthouse in Manhattan. Glass walls, controlled light, everything polished to look effortless. I barely had time to take it in before I was moved again to the estate on Long Island. That place felt different, larger, quieter, the kind of wealth that did not need to be seen to be understood. That was also where I realized exactly what I was. Not a wife, a temporary solution. Victoria watched me at dinner that first night like I did not belong in the room. Her smile stayed in place, but nothing behind it moved. Nathan did not even pretend. He looked at me like I was already a problem he planned to deal with. Ethan said nothing. He did not object. He did not welcome me either. He just watched, like he was waiting for something to reveal itself. Back in the bedroom, I set the bottle down exactly where it had been. My fingers hovered over it for a second. Same label, same dosage, different batch. This was not random. This was planned, and I had just stepped into it. I moved to the doorway and looked up at the camera in the corner of the hallway. The small red light stayed steady, watching, recording, or at least pretending to. Cameras like that make people feel safe, like everything important is being tracked. but control only works if the right person is holding it. Someone in this house knew exactly when that camera mattered and when it did not. If they were bold enough to do this to him, they would not hesitate with me. I stepped into the hallway, my footsteps quieter than usual, like the house itself was listening. Large spaces do that. They carry sound farther than they should. Earlier that morning, Victoria had stood near the foot of Ethan's bed when he took his medication. I had not thought much about it then. Now I remembered how still she had been. Not worried, not distracted, focused, like she was counting something. I let that sit for a second. This was not just about medication. This was about control, about money, about who takes over when the man in that bed stops breathing. Someone had already decided the timing. I walked back into the room one last time. Ethan had drifted into a light sleep, his chest rising in uneven rhythm. For a moment, I thought about waking him, telling him everything, forcing this into the open before it buried itself deeper. But I didn't. Not yet, because I did not know who I could trust. I stood there, looking at him, then at the bottle on the nightstand. There were only a few people in this house who could touch his medication, and I had a feeling at least one of them was already watching to see what I would do next. Chapter 2. A House That Erases You. By morning, the house had already made up its mind about me. No one said anything directly. They did not need to. It showed in the way conversations moved around me, in the way silence settled whenever I spoke, like I had stepped into a space that was never meant to include me. Breakfast was set in a long dining room washed in pale light. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt cold. Victoria sat at the head of the table, calm, controlled. Nathan leaned back, watching me like he was waiting for something to confirm what he already believed. I took a seat halfway down. "Good morning," I said. No response. Victoria asked Nathan about a meeting, her tone smooth, uninterrupted, as if I had not spoken at all. I reached for the coffee pot. Nathan's voice cut in. "That is not for you." I looked at him. "Why not?" "It is a blend you would not appreciate," he said, almost amused. I poured it anyway. The silence tightened, subtle but deliberate. Not loud, not obvious, just enough to remind me where I stood. Ethan was not there. That mattered more than anything else in the room. Victoria set her fork down. "You do not need to involve yourself in his medical care." I met her gaze. "I am not trying to take over. I just want to make sure everything is correct. Everything is already handled." I kept my voice steady. "I have experience with medication. I worked in pharmaceutical distribution." A man at the end of the table finally spoke. "That would be my responsibility." I turned toward him. "Then you understand how important consistency is." He gave a small nod, then dismissed it just as quickly. "You are under stress. It can make small things seem significant." "This is not small," I said. "I saw a difference." "You are not part of the decision process here." "You have not even checked," I said. He folded his hands. "I do not need to check what is already controlled." Nathan let out a quiet laugh. "People like you always think you see something others miss." I looked at him. "People like me?" He shrugged. "Temporary solutions. You are here to play a role, not rewrite how things work." The words landed harder than they should have. They were not just ignoring me, they were rewriting reality in front of me, smoothing over anything that didn't fit their version of control. Victoria picked up her fork again. "This conversation is finished." It was not an argument, it was a dismissal. The rest of the meal passed the same way. I spoke less. They needed me to. The less I said, the easier it was for them to act like I was not there. By the time I stood up, I understood the system. This house did not remove people, it erased them. Later that afternoon, I found the doctor alone in a smaller sitting room. He was reviewing something on a tablet, relaxed, unbothered. "We need to talk," I said. He did not look up right away. "About what?" "The medication. The batch numbers are not consistent." He finally looked at me. "You mentioned that earlier." "Because it matters." "Or because you need it to matter," he said. I stepped closer. "Did you check it?" "I trust the systems in place." "Systems can be changed."
He leaned back slightly, studying me now. "You are new here. You do not understand how this house operates. Then explain it to me." "There is nothing to explain." The calm in his voice was more frustrating than anger would have been. "This is not in my head," I said. He gave a faint smile. "Stress can create patterns where none exist." That was the moment it became clear. They were not just dismissing me, they were positioning me as unreliable. That way, anything I said later would already be compromised. That night, Emma called. Her voice sounded thinner, like it had been worn down over time. "They might move me up," she said. I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "If everything clears, I could get the transplant sooner, maybe 3 months." 3 months. My eyes moved to the calendar. 6 months was the contract. If Ethan died before that, I walked away with nothing. If I walked away with nothing, Emma did not get the surgery. "They say it depends on funding being finalized," she added. Of course it did. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Tired, but I think this could work." Hope. I closed my eyes for a second. I will handle it. When the call ended, everything felt sharper. This was not just about him anymore. This was about timing. Someone wanted him gone, and they were working within a window that didn't match mine. That night, I went back to the hallway outside his room. The camera was still there, steady, quiet. I stood there longer than I should have, watching it. Then I went downstairs. The system panel was locked, but not well enough. It took time, but I got it open. The screen showed a continuous loop. I scrolled back. 1 in the morning. The feed cut, then resumed at 1:20. I checked again. Same gap, exact timing, down to the second. Every night. This was not maintenance, this was design. Someone had created a blind spot, a controlled absence. I stared at the timestamps, feeling something shift into place. If the camera was off every night at the same time, then someone had been inside that room more than once. The next morning, I found the house manager in the kitchen. "Why does the system reset every night?" I asked. She kept working, scheduled maintenance. "At the same time every day?" "That's how it was configured." "By who?" She hesitated just slightly. "I wouldn't know." That was not true, but it was the answer I was going to get. I left without pushing further. Patterns were choices, and someone had chosen this one carefully. Later that afternoon, I tried again. Victoria stood near the window, reading something on her phone. I stepped closer. "I need to talk to you." She did not look up. "Go ahead." "There's something wrong with Ethan's medication." That made her pause. She looked at me, calm, measured. "Do you have proof?" I held her gaze. "Not yet." "Then what you have is a theory." "It's more than that." "No, it is not," she said softly. Nathan's voice came from behind me. "And theories can be dangerous." I turned. "Dangerous for who?" He smiled slightly. "For the person who keeps repeating them." I understood exactly what that meant. They weren't warning me, they were defining my place. For the first time, I felt the shift clearly. I was done asking for permission. If they wanted me quiet, invisible, manageable, they chose the wrong person. I stopped trying to convince them and started preparing to prove them wrong.
Chapter 3. The Wrong Suspect. I needed someone who was not part of that house, someone who did not answer to its rules or its silence. Jace was the only name that made sense. I met him the next day in a cramped lab tucked behind a pharmacy in Brooklyn. The place smelled like alcohol wipes and old plastic, the kind of place where nothing fancy happened, but everything real did. He took the pill from my hand and turned it under a narrow beam of light. "Where did you get this?" "From somewhere that should not get things wrong." He gave a quiet nod and set it down, reaching for a few tools. Metal clicked softly against glass. The room felt smaller the longer I stood there. A few minutes passed before he leaned back. "This is not an accident." I crossed my arms. "Then what is it?" "Someone swapped it on purpose. Lower potency, slower effect, hard to detect unless you were looking for it." My stomach dropped. "Can it kill him?" "Yes," he said, "but not in a way that draws attention. This is controlled. Whoever did this knows exactly what they are doing." That line stayed with me. Not careless, not random, intentional. I nodded once. That is what I thought. He studied me for a second longer. Be careful with this. I almost laughed. That ship had already sailed. When I got back to the estate, nothing had changed on the surface. The same quiet, the same polished calm. But now it all felt staged. Dr. Keller controlled prescriptions. He could approve anything, delay anything. Marion controlled movement, schedules, rooms, access. Victoria controlled everything else, money, influence, decisions. And Nathan needed something. I could feel it in the way he watched everything, like he was waiting for the right moment to move. Everyone had a reason. That was the problem. That night, I stayed awake. At 12:50, I positioned myself near the hallway outside Ethan's room, just out of sight. The house was silent in a way that felt unnatural, like it was holding its breath. For a moment, I had the strange feeling that I was not the only one watching. At exactly 1, the camera light flickered. Then it went dark. I felt my pulse pick up. A shape moved at the far end of the hallway. Slow, careful. I stepped forward, keeping my movements quiet, following the figure as it turned the corner. Who is there? The figure stopped. For a second, I thought they knew I was there, that I had been seen the entire time. Then they turned. It was Marion. She looked at me, calm as ever. You are still awake. So are you. She gave a small nod. This house does not sleep the way people think it does. I stepped closer. Near his room. Her expression did not change. I check on things when needed. At 1 in the morning, if necessary. Everything about her response fit too neatly. For a moment, I believed it. Then something in me pulled back. This was too clean, too easy. Good night, I said. Good night. She walked past me without hesitation. I stood there, listening to her footsteps fade. For a second, it almost felt like relief. I had seen someone. I had an answer. But the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. The next morning, I went through the system logs. Access records, permissions, internal routing. Marion did not have clearance for medication storage, not even indirect. I read it twice, then again. If she couldn't access the medication, then what I saw last night was not what it looked like. It was something else. Someone had led me there, a perfect suspect, visible, convenient, wrong. I leaned back, staring at the screen. The house was not just hiding something, it was guiding me away from it. Later that afternoon, I found financial records in Nathan's office, hidden but not well enough. $3 million in debt. Private lenders, high interest, short timelines. I sat there, staring at the numbers. If Ethan died, control of the company would shift. Assets would move. Nathan would have a way out. The motive was obvious. Too obvious. I closed the file slowly. Something about it felt staged, like it was meant to be found. I needed to know what would happen if any of this came out. That evening, I called Daniel. If there's proof of medical manipulation, what happens to the trust? There was a pause. It gets frozen, he said. Everything stops. I frowned. No one benefits. Not immediately. Then why risk it? Another pause. Because they believe they control the outcome, or because they believe no one will see it. I ended the call and sat there, letting it settle. This was bigger than one person, bigger than one motive. That night, Ethan spoke before I did. I know something is wrong. I turned to him. You do? He nodded. I've known for a while. Why did you not say anything? He looked at me, tired but focused, because I needed to see who would move first. I stepped closer. And now? Now I know it's not just about who's doing it. I felt my chest tighten. What do you mean? He said, I think someone is being used, someone visible, someone easy to blame. Marion. The realization hit harder this time. So there's someone else. He nodded slightly. The one who doesn't show up. The room felt smaller. For the first time, I understood how deep this went. I was not just looking for a person, I was looking for the one person no one was supposed to notice. And if he was right, then the real threat had not shown itself yet. Chapter 4. The system behind it. I stopped reacting and started setting the trap. Fear had done its job. It got me this far, kept me alert, made me notice what everyone else missed. But fear also makes you predictable, and I could not afford that anymore. If I was wrong tonight, I would not get another chance. So I slowed everything down. I replaced the pills just after midnight. The originals went into a sealed bag I kept in my desk. In their place, I put a clean compound that looked identical. Same weight, same color, same coating. Inside, though, it carried a traceable marker. Invisible to the eye, impossible to ignore once you knew how to look. If someone touched it, I would know. If someone tried to switch it again, I would catch them. I slid the drawer shut and adjusted the camera hidden under the edge of the cabinet. It was small enough to disappear in the shadow line, angled perfectly at the drawer. Then I waited. The house settled into that strange quiet it only had at night. Not peaceful, not safe, just quiet in a way that made every sound feel too loud. The air system humming through the vents, a distant click from somewhere upstairs, the kind of silence that feels like it is watching you back. I sat in the dark with my phone in my hand, eyes fixed on the live feed. 12:40. 1 o'clock. My eyes burned, but I did not blink for long. At 1:03, the screen went black. No flicker, no warning, just gone. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, but I forced myself to stay still. That was the moment they counted on. Panic, movement, a mistake. I did nothing. 5 minutes stretched longer than they should have. At 1:08, the feed came back. The drawer was open. My pulse hit hard, but my hands stayed steady as I replayed the footage. Slow. Frame by frame. A shadow stepped in. A hand reached forward, calm, controlled, like it had done this before. Not Marla. Not the doctor. The sleeve came into view. Crisp fabric, expensive cut, and then the detail that mattered. A cufflink. Gold. Oval. Dark stone in the center. I zoomed in, holding my breath without realizing it. I knew that cufflink. I had seen it more than once, always at the edge of conversations, always catching light at just the right angle. Evan Pierce. The one everyone trusted, the one who never raised his voice, never made a scene, never gave anyone a reason to look too closely. Of course it was him. But even as the thoughts settled in, something in me pushed back. Too clean, too easy, like someone wanted me to see it. I called Noah. He picked up on the second ring. I have him, I said. I have proof. A pause. Then why do you sound like you do not believe it? Because I did not. I need you to check something else, I said. The security system. Not here, at the company. You think this is bigger than the house? I think this started there. Another pause, longer this time. Give me a few hours. I ended the call and stared at the frozen image of the cufflink. If Evan was involved, he was not acting alone. He was not the kind of man who took risks without protection. Morning came too fast. I found Caleb already in his office, like nothing had changed, like none of this was happening under his roof. You look like hell, he said. I did not sleep. He watched me for a second, then leaned back slightly. What did you find? I know who has been tampering with the medication. His expression stayed controlled. Who? Evan. A quiet beat passed between us. So you already suspected him? I suspected everyone. He folded his hands together. Suspicion is not enough. I have proof.
Then why are you still here? Because it wasn't the whole truth. Because this was only one piece. My phone buzzed before I could answer. Noah. I stepped into the hallway. You are right. The system is compromised. From outside? No, from inside the company. My chest tightened. Who? Another pause. Celine Hart. The name settled heavier than I expected. Chief Financial Officer, quiet, precise, the kind of person people forget is even in the room. What did she do? I asked. Everything, Noah said. She controls the flow of money, the internal approvals, the share distribution. And she's been moving things slowly, small enough no one would notice. Until now. Until what? Until you look at the full picture. If Caleb dies within the next 2 weeks, his shares shift. First to Evan, then through a clause that hands controlling interest to Celine. I went still. This was never just about killing him. No, this is about ownership, control, everything. I ended the call and stood there for a moment, letting it settle. Evan was the hand. Celine was the mind behind it, and I had been chasing the wrong target. I walked back into the office. Caleb looked up. Something changed. Everything changed. I closed the door. How much do you know? His eyes held mine. Enough to know I can't trust anyone in this house. Do you trust me? A pause. Then, quieter. You are the only one who hasn't given me a reason not to. It wasn't affection, it wasn't comfort, but it was real, and it was enough. That night, I set the stage. Dinner felt heavier than usual, not tense, not yet, just quiet in a way that made everyone aware of everyone else. Evan sat to my left, calm as ever. Celine sat across from me, unreadable. Vivian watched everything without saying a word. I placed the pill bottle on the table. The sound cut through the room. This is what you've been using, I said. No one spoke. Evan's fingers tightened slightly around his glass. Celine didn't move. Vivian tilted her head. You are making a serious accusation. I am stating a fact. I slid the images across the table. The footage, the analysis, the breakdown of what was inside the pills. And this, I added, placing the last document down. Financial records, movement of shares, the structure of the takeover. Celine's expression shifted just for a second. You should not have done that, she said quietly. Evan looked at her. Not at me. At her. That was all I needed. I thought you would never see it, didn't you? No one answered. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. For the first time, they were not in control, and they knew it. I watched it settle in their faces, the realization they couldn't hide anymore, the moment everything slipped. They were not ahead of me anymore. They were reacting. And that fear, the one they had been building for me from the beginning, finally belonged to them.
Chapter 5. What Power Really Means. Nothing fell apart overnight. It unraveled slowly, the way things do when they were built on control instead of truth. That dinner did not end anything. It exposed everything. By the time the sun came up, the process had already started. Noah moved first. Every piece of evidence we had was cleaned, verified, and sent out before anyone inside the house could react. Not just the footage from the cabinet, not just the pills. Financial records, internal approvals, transaction trails that went back years. It was bigger than any of us thought. By mid-morning, federal investigators were already involved. Celine Hart was the first one taken. No shouting, no resistance. Just 2 agents walking into her office and walking her back out. Calm, precise, like they had done this 100 times before. She passed me in the hallway on her way out. She stopped for a second. You think this is over, she said. It is for you, I replied. Her eyes did not change. You are still thinking too small. Maybe she believed that, or maybe she needed to. Evan tried to hold his position longer. He denied everything, said the footage was incomplete, said the system had been tampered with, said I was twisting facts into something they were not. He sounded convincing. He always did. But numbers do not bend the way people do. The financial pressure he had been hiding, the private agreements, the transfers Noah uncovered, they all pointed in the same direction. One by one, every excuse he made fell apart. By the second day, he stopped talking. Dr. Harlan lost his license before he could even respond publicly. There was no defense for what he signed off on, no explanation for the compounds, the altered reports, the quiet approvals that should never have happened. His name disappeared from the hospital system like it had never been there. Margaret tried to keep control. She moved quickly, tried to lock down the trust, tried to stabilize the board, tried to contain what was already spreading beyond her reach. But control depends on timing, and she was already too late. The trust was frozen. The board stepped in. Votes shifted in a way she could not stop. I watched it happen across the conference room table, the exact moment she realized there was nothing left to manage. Her power did not break. It slipped through her hands. Caleb lived. Not because they failed, but because, for once, we moved before they did. Everything that had been delayed suddenly moved forward. Approvals cleared, schedules opened. People who had hesitated before were now careful, focused, doing their jobs without interference. Lila's surgery was scheduled within days. I sat with her the night before, the hospital room quiet except for the steady rhythm of the monitors. She looked tired, but steady. "You really did it," she said. I shook my head. I just did not stop. She smiled, soft and certain. That is the same thing. I held her hand and stayed there longer than I needed to. No strategy, no planning, just being there. During the surgery, there was nothing left for me to do. No moves to make, no decisions to control, just waiting. When the surgeon finally stepped out, I knew before he spoke. It went well. That was all I needed. Days later, I went back to see Caleb. Not as someone tied to him by contract, not as someone trying to prove anything, just as someone who had gone through the system and made it out the other side. He was standing by the window when I walked in. "You look different," he said. "So do you." She studied me for a moment. "They underestimated you." I met his eyes. No, they just never really saw me. That was the truth. Not weakness, not silence, just the mistake of assuming I would stay where they placed me. "I don't think anyone will make that mistake again," he said. "They won't get the chance." The room settled into a quiet that felt clean, not heavy like before. I turned toward the door, then paused. "This system you built," I said, "it worked for you." "It did." "It doesn't anymore." He did not argue. He didn't need to. I left without looking back. The house felt different when I returned. Not safe, but clear. Nothing hidden, nothing waiting in the dark. For the first time since I walked in, I was not reacting to the rules. I understood them, and that meant I could change them. Power was never what I thought it was. It wasn't control over people. It wasn't influence or status or money. It was the ability to decide what mattered, to step forward when everyone expected you to stay quiet, to be seen when they built everything around the idea that you wouldn't be. This was not just revenge. It was the truth finally coming to the surface. I was not the same person who walked into that house. And I never would be again. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, made to feel like your voice didn't matter, then you already know what comes next. You stop waiting. You stop asking. And when the moment comes, you take it. You make sure they see you, because once they do, everything changes. They thought they owned everything. They never realized they were the ones being replaced. I walked out of that house without looking back. What would you have done in my place? If this story meant something to you, Stay with me. Share your thoughts below and follow along for more stories that might feel a little closer to your own.